Hey, what's up YouTube? What's going on? In today's new video, what I wanted to talk about is extension-based lower back pain. Now, for the majority of my channel and a lot of the videos that I put out, a lot of it has been revolved around disc-related issues, which are specifically flexion-based issues the majority of the time. And when we're talking about extension-based issues, we're talking about issues that may revolve around facet joint arthritis, maybe a pars fracture, or spondylolisthesis. And in these cases, they're typically caused by repeated lumbar extension under load. So similar to how a disc bulge or disc herniation is created, in a disc bulge or disc herniation, it's created by flexion under load, which is the mechanism for creating that type of injury. But on the opposite, low back extension under load is what will cause things like facet joint arthritis, a pars fracture, spondylolisthesis. And the issue with extension-based issues is that oftentimes it's usually due to repeated exposure of exercises such as maybe a shoulder press or a Bulgarian split squat, where people will be compensating by going into lumbar extension to perform those lifts. So if looking at a bilateral overhead shoulder press, what people will often do is as they load up and they start doing a shoulder press, they compensate by going into this lumbar extension pattern. And so when we have a barbell placed over our head here, we're increasing the load on our low back. And so by going into lumbar extension, we start relying on a lot of those passive restraints in the low back, specifically our facet joints, because now we're shifting the loading pattern. So what ends up happening is that as we repeatedly do that over time, issues may develop, such as facet joint arthritis or maybe a stress fracture like a pars fracture may develop. And it's usually due to the repeated exposure, and people do not recognize this when they're compensating, but that's just one example. Another example can be seen with a Bulgarian split squat. Oftentimes people will compensate by going into that lumbar extension. Just as a result of poor hip mobility, they just can't get into the appropriate position without compensating. So they're compensating by going to that lumbar extension pattern. Repeatedly doing this over time can create issues. Now, where it becomes most problematic is that when we take these exercises and people continue to perform them with bad form by compensating, and then we combine that with their sport. So if we look at a sport like basketball, maybe hockey or baseball, where we have we have constant extension patterns being created, and in some of those sports there's a lot of twisting involved as well. And so when you combine that with the poor technique, this is how these lower back problems or troubles may be created over time. So as a strength and conditioning coach, performance coach, we need to correct these issues that may exist with athletes or individuals and make sure they're not compensating. So we need to get them into the appropriate positions. Maybe we have to develop anterior core control, maybe improve their hip mobility or core stability so they can get into the proper position to perform those lifts, or maybe we just regress the exercises to something that doesn't allow them to compensate, but they're still performing some sort of similar motion, but they don't do it in a way that they're compensating. And now, with all that being said too, people with extension-based issues typically may present with symptoms of pain that may occur during walking or just going into lumbar extension for that matter. And if you look to common sports, I just kind of named a few, but another common sport would be swimming, where we have swimmers, when they perform the breaststroke or butterfly, they're going into these hyperextension patterns, which may create a stress fracture over time, but combined with the poor lifting, that's where the issues can be created, or at least sped up in terms of the onset of those issues. So that's why it's very important to monitor an individual's technique and make sure they're not compensating by going to lumbar extension. So those are just kind of a few things I wanted to mention with regards to extension-based back pain. So like I mentioned, the symptoms too, walking or just going into lumbar extension, even jumping for that matter, may cause some issues in people as well. So those are just a few things to kind of consider with regards to lumbar kind of extension-based back pain for that matter, and some common exercises that people tend to screw up or compensate in that can create these issues, and some sports as well where you may see some of these issues develop. So I just wanted to kind of make that video, touch on extension-based back pain, because it's not something that I really have gone into too much detail before. A lot of my channel and videos are more around flexion-based issues, specifically disc issues for that matter. So I just wanted to kind of touch on this video and kind of clarify things for anyone that may not understand extension-based back pain. Okay guys, if you have any questions, comments, anything you'd like me to cover, feel free to leave a comment below. And with that being said, we will wrap up this video. I wish you guys all the best and a successful and productive day. Take care.